Hello everybody and welcome to Cause and Effect, a show about Vetes. Today we are going to talk about the forbidden dance, the lambada of Vetes if you want to, cross-table ousting. First we're going to talk about the do's and don'ts, a little bit theory behind the cross-table ousting, and then later on we are going to show a few examples of good decks that are capable of cross-table ousting without losing too much momentum. But first, as always, I would like to introduce my own Chewbacca's of this Millennium Falcon of Vites. Adam Luke Esbjörnsson and Isak Leia Esbjörnsson Bjärmark. Say hello.
Hello. Did we kiss?
Yeah,
once, and it was really awkward?
Yes.
Okay.
That's... Oh.
No.
Yeah.
No, please no.
Okay.
We were not
You
prepared for
should
this opening.
inform us about these analogies before we go live.
You said
Like,
no.
at first you're like, oh, cross-table ousting is a dance? Okay, I can work with that. What? Me? Leia?
I can work with you being Leia. Look at you have the buns on the side of your head.
Yeah,
I can work with you being Leia.
buns.
I could work with me being Luke.
and
But we never kissed.
I refer to you both as Chewbacca's as well.
Yeah,
instead of the hair.
I could work with that as well.
Yeah.
That would be fine.
Chewbacca, no problem.
Okay, we're getting a little bit off topic already.
I was talking about
You started it.
I was trying to explain for the viewers what kind of relationship we have and you two have.
And we were trying to tell them which kind we didn't have.
Okay, so no kissing, but they're related.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, before we start in getting into the nasty business of cross-table ousting, I would like to ask you guys, how was your Vetes week been, Isak?
I did not play any casual games this week. Though I did play a tournament yesterday.
Oh.
7 people tournament. But you can do more exciting tournaments, though it was okay. I managed 1 VP and not getting into the finals on TPs. Shit happens.
What did you play?
Played a Lutz and Nada based deck with boats and power bleed.
Cool. Did you do any cross-table ousting?
No, I did not. There were no advantages.
That's probably why you lost. Adam, how was your week?
Yeah.
It was. I just had the regular Wednesday night games. It was fine. One of our regulars are just back from Japan, and so the traveling schedule is a lot better. So now we can manage 3 games each night.
Oh, cool.
For the longest, well, for like a month, we've only been doing 2 weeks each night. So it's a lot better.
And you, Anders?
Yeah,
Are you still whooping ass in Northland?
both. I did manage to. We played 3 games this Wednesday. I won 1 and got a table split 1 and was ag poked one of the games. When I tried out my new Lucian the Perfect bleed deck, I was ag poked and burned 2 Lucians that game and I lost.
Okay, so 1 or 2 Majesties next time?
No, it was Immortal Grapple and then ag poke with.
So you got a case of
case.
karma. You bled
Yeah.
254, and you got Amaranth.
Yes.
You should play
Sidestep.
well marked.
Can't prevent aggravated damage.
Okay, don't play well marked.
Okay, well,
Take Black Jacket instead. It's a great card.
the only thing that's what's like the only combo that would hurt me, and of course that was my prey. It's fair and appropriate.
Yes.
But it's good fun. Anywho, so we're going to talk about cross-table ousting today. The great art of cross-table ousting. It's hard. So when should you consider cross-table ousting, Adam?
Well, the easiest part is, of course, when you realize it's like, okay, this player I'm going to have to face at some point, and when I do that, I will not be able to stop him or oust him, depending on how you're going to face him. At that point, when you realize that's going to happen, you need to do something about it when you still have the chance, or prepare for it. Okay. And in some cases, preparing for it is like hunting and getting equipment and building up. And in some cases, it's cross-table ousting. Yeah, more or less. Put simply.
Do you have any Anything to add about that? Initial thoughts?
I don't know. Cross table ousting. I add this like a meta comment about the whole stuff. It's kind of a taboo within the community to cross table oust, and when you cross table oust, you should be really sorry. I really need to have to do that. There's all this stigma associated with cross table ousting, which hopefully this episode will wipe some of that away, because within the logic of the game, there are more often than not moments where you need to either straight out cross table oust, or at least put some pressure cross table to be able to get the table in your favor.
Yeah. I mean, I would say the only thing more stigmatic than cross-table ousting is, of course, self-ousting, which is a whole other area we could talk about some other time.
Yes,
but yeah,
probably. So probably those are the trinity of taboos in Vitas: self-ousting, cross-table ousting, and deal-breaking.
Yeah.
And 2 of those are essential to be a good Vitas player. And as a hint to the audience, it's not self-ousting. People win no games.
Self-ousting is only good when you don't have to do it.
Yeah. Okay, so we know kind of how or when to consider cross-table ousting. Then how? What is the easiest way to cross-table oust? Maybe Isaac.
Kick someone when someone is down, and that is down on pool. So people are overextended for some reason is very easy prey, and especially if you play boats yourself, that is the most easy thing. I've seen it several times. Someone cross table overextending, expecting to get an easy VP soon, or have counted their predator out, or some situation like that. And then their cross table, so-called cross table buddy, has 2 kinds on his hand. It's like, yeah, I'll just cross table out, and it's the easiest way.
Yeah. So, Adam, do you have anything there?
No, that's how it is, more or less.
Yeah.
Something that I like to point out is one, in some cases, efficient way of maybe not cross-table ousting, but back ousting, is to just play defensive for a few turns. Some decks can't handle that. Say we need Imitation, or we need Presence, or we need Dominate. If you have that as a Predator, just staying untapped and try to be defensive a few turns is like tantamount to back ousting that player. So you can keep that in mind. So like, okay, if I just stay untapped now, he's gonna die, and then I'm fine. So,
yeah, I was thinking about taking opportunity when people overextend. It's usually when someone decides to take out another minion and get slow on pool, and therefore it's also getting stronger in the game. And like Isaac said, probably going to take a VP. It's always good to just, not always, but sometimes it's really good to just cross-table oust him so it doesn't get so much of an upper hand for the extra minion that he gained.
Most of the time this happens when that player has, as Isaac said, counted out his predator, or his or her predator. So if a player gets a new minion that he shouldn't afford without having a predator, cross-table ousting for that player is fine, because the predator is in such a bad position. It normally only happens when that predator can't actually do anything more.
Yeah.
So if you just give a VP to someone who's been counted out before, it's fine, because this fictional player won't be strong because of it. It's fine to give that player a VP.
So, why would you were touching the subject, Adam, but why would you cross-table oust?
Well, yeah, it's when you feel that this player is too strong for me, and I will have to face it. In some cases, you'll be in the situation where you feel like this is a really bad matchup for me, but he'll die anyway. Then you should realize that and ignore it. But in some cases, you'll find out that, for instance, if it's your predator, then it's back ousting, and then it's like a direct thing. You can't handle this player in the next turn, then you back oust. But in some cases you realize it's cross-table. For instance, cross-table Auspex Weenie, who's under no real threat and has 4 counters on Smiling Jack, you probably want to put a few kinds in that player.
Yeah.
And since it's just a good thing to do. Most people realize this at the same time as they realize this player is going to win the game. But yeah, so I think this this thought process is the origin of the term table balance. Actually, table balance is a word that's been thrown around a lot, and is being thrown around a lot. And I think it mostly comes down to cross-table ousting, and when you realize you need to cross-table oust someone. Because if someone by default is the winner of a game, that player needs to be stopped, like by I don't know what to call it, extracurricular
Activities.
yeah, no, extracurricular play, like not non-standard play. Someone puts a kind cross table, or someone DIs a deflection, or something like that, to make the game winnable for the 4 other players.
Yeah. So when should you? Is there any difference between the reasoning when you should cross table out someone or just cross table hurt someone? Isaac?
There's I don't know. For me, it's mostly I have a certain amount of actions, I have a certain amount of cards in my pool, and I have cards in my deck. Sorry, and pool in my pool. I have a certain amount of resources, and say I have 2 or 3 actions my turn. I can at most use 1 action to something that is not absolutely necessary. The other 2 actions might need to be a bloat or a rescue from torpor or something like that. We just have this hypothetical scenario. Then I have this 1 action, and I see that a guy cross table is doing really well, and it's a bad matchup for me. What the hell? Why not play a cross table banishment, for instance, or mind rape? And if that gets him ousted, okay, whatever, it's fine. I couldn't deal with that matchup later on in the game either way. And if he survives, hey, that might be even better. He loses a turn, or maybe 2, or actions, I'd say. An action or 2 and some pool.
Yeah.
And maybe the ability to defend himself.
But if you... Adam?
I think what Isaac started off with is really, really important. It's not only finding out that you need to do it, that it's essential to your game plan. It's also finding that it's worth it. You need an opportunity that's good for you as well.
Okay.
So if you only have 1 deflection on hand, you need it to oust your prey or whatever, you might not want to send a bleed back or send a bleed cross table. You're going to use that for yourself. But if you have lots of extra resources in that area, and you don't feel like, okay, I'm going to oust my prey anyway, it might take a bit longer, but I'm going to do it anyway, it's fine, then it's not such big of a cost, and then you can do it. So it's like, you need opportunity as well. It needs to be worth it for you. It can't cost too much from your own resources to hurt someone cross table. And then you need to balance that. Is it worth it for me, contra is it worth it to hurt this player this much that I have the opportunity to do right now?
But shouldn't you think about retributions as well? If you only hurt a player cross table, he might get, or he or she might be able to start messing with your game or trying to just retributions. How should you think about that?
Are you talking about reasonable retribution or like just nerd rage?
I would say reasonable retribution. Nerd rage is just a factor you can't really. You have to of course think about, but you can't really plan.
In most cases, if the cross table body is I did a thing with my fingers, is a bad matchup for you, then it's the other way around for him or her. You're a good matchup.
Yeah.
So that player probably don't have as big of an incentive to actually do stuff to your cross table. I know I've heard reasoning along this path. If I get attacked in what I deem an unreasonable way, say cross table or back ousting, I do threat to make a threat to do something. And after that threat, since I did the threat, I need to conclude so that in future game, the cross-table buddy knows that retribution will come and will come swift, hard, and with great vengeance and furious anger. Because, and that reasoning is, in my opinion, more towards the nerd rage area.
Okay.
It's not nerd rage, but you have this really long plan. So, in 2 or 3 years, this player, after a certain amount of games, will learn that I am a vindictive motherfucker. Sorry. I really, really do want my revenge when it comes. So, making that as a deterrent. That is very difficult to assess. But speaking just for the game, if you take game by game, then the logics, in my opinion, states that the one who gets attacked cross-table don't have as much interest in retribution from a gameplay perspective, but you might have this long plan
it's two different
of
things.
yeah.
Yeah.
But it's also, in some cases, that other player will be in the same situation, where it's like, okay, this game is real about you and me cross-table. Your biggest threat is the other player's biggest threat is you. And at that point, it's good to preempt the other player, to be the one who first starts doing the cross-table stuff, because then you'll be more powerful. You get to have the biggest opportunity to be... and of course, all the other 3 players are like, we need to balance these superpowers, so none of them is too strong. But that's another thing altogether.
That what you mentioned, the typical example for that, in my opinion, is 2 cross-table voting buddies.
Yeah.
And at one point, either one wants to do a very out of the clear sky banishment on one of the guys with low amount of pool, because the one who first does this and managed to get a vote block on the others, really strong position. So you take one of preferably a Justicar, a 3-vote guy that just got villain down to 2 blood, 1 blood, even 0 maybe. You do the banishment, you push it through, and you probably have the vote block for possibly the entire game, at least for 2 to 3 turns.
Yeah.
So it's also that consideration. But of course, when you do the cost versus benefit thing, if you have the possibility to try to understand how vindictive the other player is, you can, in your mind, increase the cost of that action. Okay, maybe I will be rushed, or maybe I will get some damage cross table, and calculate that as well. And is it still worth it? Then yes, then do it. If it's not worth it, okay, I'll not do it. It might be the thing that tips it over, but it might not be the thing that tips it over also.
One thing that should be said about this vindictiveness that certain people have is that if they act out their urge to take vengeance on you, they will actually put themselves in a worse gameplay position.
Yeah.
So if they lose, there's a high cost for them to take vengeance, then it's really good for you. Say they only have 1 rush in their action, and take that rush to you. And maybe you have a guy going to torpor, but you have a wake, so you decide which one goes to torpor, and it's fine, it's okay. But this results in them being bled to death by dominate, for instance. Then it might seem as a high cost, you have a guy in torpor, but the loss for that player is even bigger. It's like taking vengeance, that player furthermore cross-table ousts himself for you. So that vengeance might actually work in your favor.
I like that word, vengeance.
Times.
And I think this illustrates a really interesting part of the cross-table ousting, is that when you're doing anything cross-table, you're increasing your own standing at the table, as well as increasing the other player's standing.
Decreasing.
Decreasing.
Yeah.
Decreasing. Both decreasing your own standing and the other player's standing. It might put yourself in a better...
Are you talking socially or like game...
No. Gameplay.
Yeah, okay.
Should we bring out the graphic?
Yeah, should.
Charts, pie charts, but not pie. More like a pentagon chart. Bring out the pentagon chart.
Yeah.
So here is, in this chart we label the absolute strength of someone is their standing at the table.
i.e. likeliness to win.
Yeah.
I mean, sorry, could you describe that a little bit more? How is that relative to, if you say our chosen one here, the beige? I don't know.
Yeah.
How does that power, absolute strength, 100, how does that compute with the other two around him? Explain a little bit more, please.
So yeah, from our first-person perspective, this player has a good chance against its prey, which has an absolute strength of 60, and it has a, well, at least slightly better than average chance against its predator, which has a power of 90, a strength of 90. So when you're comparing just one player to another player, you might talk about relative strength. So there's a relative strength of like a lot more with your prey and a reasonable much more with your predator, but the grand prey is like overwhelmingly powerful. And if you're in this situation, it's acceptable to lower your own strength to lower your grand prey strength at the same time. Since you have a reasonable chance against prey and predator, and you have an unreasonable risk against the grand prey, in this situation it's advisable to do something to the grand prey.
Okay.
So, so the basic idea is that if you use some of your strength to lower the strength of the 200 strength guy in this pentagon chart, then since you didn't use your strength to lower your prey's strength, that strength remains the same or maybe it even increases. So that player, the 60 strength player, gets even more efficient against its prey. So you have this chaos theory effect. Driplets of the water, whatever.
Yeah.
You follow?
Kinda. So, I mean, is there a difference between just here letting your prey oust and actually cross-table ousting, Isaac?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I'll go home.
There is, and let me just. The biggest is what kind of resources did you waste? In the one case you presented where you let your prey oust, that literally means you sit on your ass and preferably build strength. Yeah. Otherwise, you might have been in a really bad situation. So you sit on your ass and build your strength, or maybe just defend yourself against your predator. But in the other case, where you literally try to do something cross-table, you use your strength, your resources, to try to diminish the resources and strength of someone cross-table in order to help your prey or grand prey. So that's the biggest. In one case, you use your own strength and cards and resources, in another, you don't.
Okay.
And I think that's a really good distinction to make, is the build-up actions and the aggressive actions. I think I said this earlier, but it gets easier to when we have this illustration. Is if you increase your own strength by 10 units in this chart, you increase your relative strength to all the other players around the table.
That could be like getting a Bowler Convergence or anything.
Yeah, govern, superior govern. It increases your own strength, it does nothing to the other player's strength. So you increase your relative strength to all the other players. If you instead play that govern inferior, you decrease your own strength, since you tap a guy and you burn a blood from the action. But you also decrease the strength of your prey, since you bleed him. Yeah. So you, and preferably this action costs less for you than it does damage to your prey. So in this situation, you might, minus 10 for you, and I'm gonna change this to minus 15.
Yeah, preferably. Otherwise, won't do that much.
Yeah. So if you play a govern downward, it costs some blood for you, but it costs more for your prey. So increase your relative strength to your prey with this govern downwards, but you decrease your relative strength with all the other players, except for your prey.
Yeah, that seems that seems really reasonable. Could you use? I mean, to me, it seems you can use the same kind of logic when you come to helping cross table as well. Or am I wrong?
The problem with that, or sorry,
Isaac, go ahead. You are. Yeah.
The problem with that statement is that most games, and most decks don't have a lot of options of literally helping someone. The only thing that I can come up with now that is like you can either help by giving plus to one player or by giving minus to its predator, for instance, or prey.
Yeah.
And most deck doesn't have the plus to another player card. The only thing I can come up with is paired shift.
And that's
Minus as well.
it costs pool from yourself, since
I
most
say-
of the time you'll want to play it on yourself. So it costs from yourself as well, right?
Yeah. Yeah. But I would say like Considious Boon, the
Considious
card that
Boon?
gives you pool for your minions above Cup 7. Some of those.
That card might help, but most of the time, you just play it because you need to pull yourself, and sometimes you're like, oh, this is really good because only you and that a guy across table who's really is in a bad position, and it's luck. That's more luck. Paired shift you can strategize
Okay.
in order to. I will take 5 from this guy, and I will give them to my cross-table buddy who's doing really badly.
And this is something that you can think about when you build a deck.
Yeah.
It's one of the strengths of parity shift.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but when is that preferable? Why isn't it better just letting people get ousted?
Well, maybe, but say it's like this. Say this guy here, he's at 3 pool and no minions.
Which guy is that? Captain 60?
Grand Predator.
Grand Predator. Captain 110.
Yeah.
So he's at effective strength 0 because he has no pool to survive his prey. Oh, so his predator, and his predator has enough guys. Say he has 3 bleed on the table and the prey has 3 pool. At this point, his strength might be 0 because there's no possible way of surviving and no possible way of doing anything more on this table. If you give him a parity shift and he gets 1 more turn, he might be able to do something really, really amazing. I don't know. Maybe he can transfer up a guy who's just been banished and turn the whole thing around. So by giving him a parity shift cross table and giving him enough pool to survive, you can increase his strength to this past 110 again.
Okay.
Because he got that extra turn.
Yeah.
So in this way, that pool you give him in this fictive scenario is incredibly efficient. It gives him a lot of strength. It gives him this extra guy that he needs to turn the whole thing around.
Yeah.
And if you can't do something like borderline magical like that, it's probably not worth it to save people cross table. But in some situations, it's efficient enough that it's worth it.
Yeah. Okay, so you would say, how are the risk and rewards of cross table ousting, Isak?
The main 2 risks we've touched upon, or might be good to summarize. It's the chance of the cross table buddy to exact vengeance on you. That's one risk, and you should calculate that risk. And the other risk is you wasting too much of your resources on something that just ends up with you having 0 VPs.
Yeah.
You have to calculate it. So it might just be, in this situation, better to just get this 60 strength bloke out of the way and hope and pray to LSJ and Pascal, whoever the Vitus guards are, that the 200 guy slips up in some way. So you manage to oust that guy.
Yeah, and then
Or just like, that's a problem for future Isaac, and just leave it at that.
just take your VP.
Yeah. So those are 2 biggest risks in my opinion.
Okay. Rewards? Isak, you can...
I think it's Adam's turn to talk.
okay.
The rewards are obviously game wins. It's true. What you want is to have a even chance with the even or like beneficial chance with the people you get into the 3-player game or the duel with. That's like the goal.
Yeah. You hear a lot of talking. I can't go into the duel with you, so we have to do something about it's
Yeah.
normal.
Okay, I can show another.
Sorry.
Oh,
Adam, you can
yeah.
finish your train of
sorry.
thought first, maybe.
Sure. Well, actually, I'd like to talk about a possible risk, if that's fine.
Okay, well, wait a minute with the risk. And Isak, did you have anything to say about rewards first? No?
No, I were going to the next bus stop. So go on.
Okay, Adam then.
Like, there was something that this illustration shows is also who has the responsibility of doing the cross-table ousting.
Yeah.
Since, as we said, it costs resources from yourself to initiate the cross-table oust. It's for this player here, the 90 strength player, for this player to waste resources to lower the 200 strength player's strength would be kind of unreasonable, because that probably means that one of these two players win by default, because they already already have an advantage.
By these two, which are you talking about?
The 100 and the 110 strength.
Okay.
Since if the other players, the 200 player gets lowered to some reasonable amount, close to 100, and the 90 strength player gets lowered to anything lower. The other two players they'll win. One of these two will win by default. Obviously, the predator here won't want that.
Okay.
So it's the players who have the possibility of cross-table ousting and that benefit from it, but won't kill themselves by doing it, is the ones that normally will try to take action to do it, right?
Yeah.
The 60 strength player, well, obviously he'll try because it's his prey, and the 90 strength player can't afford it. It costs too much.
Yeah.
So it's the 100 strength or the 110 strength player who's going to do that on this table. And it's important to realize that, since if you are the 90 strength player, you don't want to try to cross-table oust. You need to tell everyone else that, okay, if I do that, I'll die. I can't do that. It's your job or your job. You're the one who's going to end up losing if you don't do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that player, the 90 strength player, needs to focus on getting at least the relative strength towards his prey and predator more balanced.
Yeah.
So save resources and take actions that strengthen him towards the 110 strength player is the most important one, because that's the predator. So you need to save your strength, but the 100 and 110 strength player are more in an advantage position, so they have their eyes more on the horizon, whereas the 90 strength player more is looking towards, I don't want to die, oh my god, I don't want to die.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that seemed reasonable. So
that's like a risk that you need to think about when you're cross-table ousting.
Isak, you were going to another bus stop. If I remember correctly.
So we have this scenario, and let's see if I can manage to get this right. Where you have some of these dead. Does this make sense? No, this makes sense. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. So as long as... Yeah, okay, go on.
So say those two people are dead, the 90 strength player and 200 strength player. You end up in another situation where it's preferable. It's not literally a cross-table oust, but it's not a conventional oust. And here you end up in a situation where you have to see the opportunity. You and the 60 strength guy both have the same wants, in that player needs to die, the 110 strength player. Both of you are feeling very in a disadvantaged position, and your only option to actually win is to work together to lower the 10 strength player's strength. But you can't cross-table oust.
Yeah.
Or back oust in this case, because then you lose the game win.
Because this will be a table split if
Yeah.
he gets another point.
So here another reason where you might have the strength to actually go full thrust backwards and just obliterate that person, but you can't do it because then you end up in an unwinnable situation, like basically, literally unwinnable.
Yeah.
So you have to think about these situations as well. Same position. If I move one of the X's, so this situation, same thing. It's not as much of a difficulty. Now the 60 strength player have 2 VPs. You have to get the final 2 ousts on this table. There's no other way to do it. Because it can be really tempting, because cross-table ousting and back ousting is a lot easier than just ousting.
Yeah.
Because you're at least 2 against 1.
Yeah.
I just want to point this out, that in a 5-player situation where no one's dead, it's easier to calculate, but you have to think 1 or 2 steps ahead.
Yeah.
What happens after that?
And it might be, you don't even need to deal about it either. If I put the cross back, if I can.
Yeah.
Yeah. You don't even need to make a deal about it if it's like this. You can just be defensive and build up yourself, and eventually you will surpass your predator in strength. And at that point you can start playing a normal game. Since if you play defensive and your prey plays aggressive, you're gonna end up on top. You're gonna be the strongest player.
Yeah.
So,
Situation, though, it can be really difficult for the 60 strength player to actually trust you not to oust as soon as possible. Because as the 100 strength player in this position, you need to have the 60 strength player think that it's a good idea that that's the 110 strength player.
Okay, that's okay. I think we need to end this discussion. I'm sorry, it's a little bit too defined, but I hope you guys out there understand what we're saying. Just think and plan ahead.
yeah.
Okay, so before we end our first first segment of this show, do any of you guys have any cool cross-table ousting stories you would like to share?
Yeah, I have one. One of the first. I think I remember one of my first situations where I just like, it's so fantastic just to cross-table oust. It's smooth and making a game. I'm me playing a law firm, and a really fat law firm, so it was kind of slow, and no stealth basically, just some perfect paragons, stuff like that. And cross-table, I think it was a 4-player table, or at least it turned around and became a 4-player table, where this nasty animalism Raven spy wall, and this was before the release of Deep Song, I think, or at least there were no deep songs in that particular deck, so it was a very heavy block deck. And if you play a law firm and you face animalism block, you're just like, oh god, I don't wanna. And then all of a sudden I realized this. So if I play Kine, and then play Kine, and then play Kine, have my prey and this very horrendous block deck out at the same time, and the animalism deck has no chance in hell of stopping me, because animalism means no eagle sight, and it's all fine. So that's a small story from my life.
And at this point, it almost literally cost you nothing.
Yeah.
It only
cost me the loss of 1 VP, which I would never ever have gotten anyways.
Yeah. So it's almost like it cost you nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a sunshine tale or something.
Yeah.
I could share a cautionary tale.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I played a Weenie Prince deck once, that you take out a Weenie and do Praxis Cheeser at a final table of our league. And across the table was Erik Torstensson that played a Weenie DBR. And I of some reason just freaked out and just, I can't really handle a weenie DBR. I will be killed like hell. So I decided to do some cross-table damage. So I left him at one pool and just thought my prey would oust him. But instead, of course, my prey, I was like, yeah, I'll give you a turn, Eric, and you can just rush cross-table at Anders how much you want to. And I got stiffed. and
Yeah, go on.
and I learned a valuable lesson that if you are going to cross-table oust, don't leave somebody at one pool that have rushes, because,
But that was on purpose. You actually had the...
I had the option to oust him, but I just left him at one pool and did one more damage on my prey, because I thought that, he's gonna take the VP. Of course he didn't take the VP.
So Eric exacted vengeance upon you.
Yeah, a lot of vengeance. And then I learned from that mistake and moved on.
You always cross-table oust Eric.
Yeah, and do it properly. Yeah. Okay, Adam, do you have anything to share, or should we round about?
Yeah, I can talk about the Swedish nationals.
Yeah.
And this is kind of a cautionary tale as well, because I was the one who was cross-table ousted. I played Imbued, and there was a weenie Auspex with Smiling Jack, and as all you know, Smiling Jack kills Imbued a lot.
Yeah.
Imbued has really no way of dealing with it.
Because they can't burn blood, right?
We can't burn blood, and you can't remove it either. Only vampires can take the action. And they also have really, really bad bloat, so you can't bloat through. And I can't remove it, and the other players are like, well, it's really bad that the Spiny Jack is there, but my Predator wanted me to die, obviously, and I was going to die before him. My prey can't remove it because he's been killed by this Auspex weenie, and same with my Grand Predator, he can't remove it because the Auspex weenie blocks him. We would have needed to make an agreement where 4 players remove it, but we can't, so no one could. And then at this point the Auspex weenie gets really strong because of it. But I still die, and this makes my Predator get enough momentum and kill 2 players, and then he gets into the duel with the Auspex weenie, and then he wins it by playing There in the Dawn and just ousting him.
Yeah.
And by my Predator, this is a game that's like exquisitely balanced for doing exactly what he needs to do to win the game. He's one of these players who had an absolute strength of close to 0 from the start, because he had like this Auspex weenie who eventually gets 7 counters on Spiny Jack, and he has Imbued deck as prey. But by balancing out every other player around the table and decreasing their strength without losing too much by himself, he just exquisitely balances the table and then eventually just goes for the kill, and he wins that table because of like this genius balancing act. So, well, it's kind of hard to explain what happened, but if you have this thinking about the table balance and cross-table ousting and balancing all the players around each other,
the resources.
You can turn this unwinnable situation against 2 decks that hard counter you, which get really good start, and turn around and still win.
Yeah, because he's played some kind of law firm or Vignes deck or something around that area.
Yeah.
And you played Imbued, which is a hard counter, and the Auspex weenie, which is a hard counter.
Yeah. And the Smiling Jack, which just should kill. It reaches 7. It reached 7 counters. It's actually outrageous.
But what he basically didn't do was remove Smiling Jack.
But this table had a lot of dealing and going back and forth and tiny things that could have changed something.
Okay.
But he just made the right decisions in this place and played it out perfectly and won.
Cool. So, anyways, that's some tales from real life. In the next segment of our show, we will talk about 3 decks that are good handling the resources to be able to cross-table oust. So we'll see you in part 2.
Goodbye.
Bye.